Hi, everybody. I am Allison Williams, the Library Services Coordinator for the Copper Queen Library, and I am thrilled to have Carlos Valenzuela, author, um, here tonight with his book. I'm actually going to unspotlight. Um, just one second. Oh, my goodness, my little computer. So just for a minute, I wanted to show you the book, Letters to Young Carlos. And I am actually really thrilled to say that Carlos has written a new book, which will be out, I believe, in September. And we will also be doing another book presentation with Carlos in October. The new book is called The Lost Years, Chameleon, The Lost Years, Living in the Closet. And also, I just wanted to say, Carlos wrote his first novel, which this is, at the age of 75. Just a couple months ago. No, it was, I think, 2 years ago. But that is a real inspiration to me, and I think a lot of members of our community. It's a really good reminder about dreams and intentionality and who we are as human beings, that we are always living and growing, and that there is no age limit on anything. If you want to write a novel, sit down and write a novel. My uncle is a novelist, and he said, "Oh, I never sit down to write a novel. I sit down to write 5 to 10 pages." And so, Carlos, I just wanted to thank you personally for being such an inspiration for this and for telling your story, or rather, young Carlos's story. So I'm just going to read from the about the author on this book. Carlos Valenzuela grew up along the US-Mexico border cities of Agua Prieta and Douglas, Arizona, just down the street from Bisbee, the fourth child of a cattle ranching family. He attended American schools from an early age and obtained a master's in international management. He initially worked in Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico City as a young manager, but left the corporate world to pursue more creative interests. He moved to London in 1973, where he studied hairdressing at the Vidal Sassoon Academy, and later worked for Pivot Point International as a worldwide spokesperson. His niche is training and education, and he has written numerous technical and personal development programs. And he started writing late in life as a hobby until invited to contribute to a major beauty magazine, where he is now widely read by thousands of followers. And Letters to Young Carlos is his first book. So welcome, Carlos. We are so happy to have you, and that we were able to reschedule this presentation after the power went down in all of Bisbee the last time we had this scheduled. So welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Allison. For a person that tries to live always in the present, when somebody reads your bio, it to me seems so pretentious, because that seems so far away. Life is going so fast. I mean, so if you have something like wanting to write a book or a poem or a good sentence, do it, because before you know it, you're going to be 77 like me. And it's the time is now. But I also feel so blessed and thrilled, honestly thrilled, to be here at the Copper Queen Library. Well, not there, but somewhat there. Because one of the things that I do in life, and I offer it as a suggestion to you, is I try to really manage my expectations, because I am basically and fundamentally an empath. a very serious empath. And you know that is a person that feels emotion a lot deeper than the normal person. And it has nothing to do with being gay or being a man or being a woman or being masculine or feminine. We come in all sizes and colors. And disappointment for me is very, very deep. So I'm not the person that can go, oh, well, I'll think about it tomorrow. I really go into a bit of a sad period when I am disappointed about something. So what I've done to avert this is I try to manage my expectations. It's a game I play with myself by lowballing the results. And when I say this to people or to an audience, they will always say, well, that doesn't sound real good. Why would you be lowballing your results? Then you probably never come up a winner. Well, I lowball my results, but I totally work very hard to get them. So you work hard, but you lowball. Therefore, the result is always a surprise for me and never a disappointment. So when I get an invitation to come to the Copper Queen Library, or when I see your faces right here in front of me from all over, attending, wanting to listen to what I have to say about being gay in the 1960s, I'm really, really blown away, because you can imagine I lowballed what might happen today. And again, it was, to me, over the top. So I thank you for coming, and I heartily endorse and suggest that we all manage expectations, because it eventually leads to a much happier life, I think. But I wanted to start by telling you why I did write the book, Letters to Young Carlos, and why it's not an autobiography, even though the name Carlos is on there. I have a very dear friend. As a matter of fact, one of our participants here, Bonita, knows him. He lives in Agua Prieta, and he has been my friend. You know those people that you don't remember when you met them because they've always been there? That's my friend Tatai. And he was actually the inspiration for one of the characters in the Letters to Young Carlos, to young Carlos's best friend, whose name was Tulio. So we were sitting after I retired from this, all that you just heard, and we were sitting having coffee, and we decided that wouldn't it be nice if I had known that that was not going to happen, because we both grew up in the 60s in what was the most pristine bicultural culture at the time. Two cities, Agua Prieta and Douglas, living together as one big happy family. That's what it was. And what we commenting, wouldn't it be nice if I had known this, that wouldn't have happened if I had known this. So I came back from that conversation, and I decided to write letters to myself and to young Carlos. And I started writing the letters, and I showed them to somebody, and they said, these are wonderful. Now you need to write the book. So I started writing the book, thinking later on I will create the title. Right now, let's just tell the story. But it's not about me. It's not my story. I guarantee you, despite what you just heard about an intro, my life isn't that interesting. I live a very simple life, and I like it that way. So I don't think my life is that interesting to write a book. So I made up the story of young Carlos based on how it was back then. I didn't make up the decade, because that would have been beyond my qualifications, but I did make up the story. So it's not a true story. And there were no special characters that were real, or if anybody thinks it's somebody, when I do my presentations, people will come up to me all the time and they will ask, okay, who was Jesse? Tell me who was Jesse, or tell me who this was, or tell me who that was. Well, it was nobody. It was somebody that I made up. And I think one of the reasons why the theme of young Carlos has struck a chord is because the topics of the letters, although they are of importance to the queer community, and I want to explain the word queer for those of you that have not heard it. If you have not heard it in context with the LGBTQ community, this is the word that used to be used against us to demean us and make us feel bad and offend us. So we took it upon ourselves and made it sort of like a badge of honor. So we now call ourselves queers, and I call myself queer, and I will probably use it frequently. So don't be offended. It is a common word now for us in the community. So I found that a lot of the concepts that I wrote, which were for the gay community in the letters, resonated incredibly with non-queer people. And that was a very big surprise for me, because a lot of my readership are people who are not queer. At least the ones that communicate to me are not so. But the themes that are common are things like acceptance, friendship, first love, heartbreak, and leaving home, all very young themes. But that is, of course, the story. How does the book develop? The book is about an old man like me who is in a nursing home, who decides to write letters to his younger self in the hopes that he can avert that the letters would be shared by the nurse that took care of him with other young queers, and hopefully avoid some of the disappointments that he saw. So that's why it goes through so many themes. And what I'd like to do, then of course he starts writing the letters, and the story revolves around each letter. The first letter that he writes is probably the key letter, and a letter that, as I said, resonates with anybody, which I wasn't sure. I didn't know it would resonate that way. I knew it would be important to all queer people, but I wasn't sure that everybody. It turns out that the people that have opened themselves up to me, which I love and I appreciate, and I guard your anonymity, were just as uncomfortable as I was about having skinny legs, about being short, about coming from the wrong side of the tracks, about having a father that drank. And all of these come down to the topic of shame. We feel ashamed. And when I began sharing the need for us to accept ourselves as we are, and in many ways to forgive ourselves, there was like a floodgate of emotion that people began sharing with me how it is that I'm not gay. That's how the note would go. I'm not gay like you. However, I was never pretty, or I never could play football. And it went on and on and on. So I think in everyone's life, the theme of accepting ourselves is so difficult. It goes on into much more into our adult lives. And it's such a dramatic and important step. So when young Carlos is 8 years old and starts having a friend and they start talking about liking boys, in the 1960s, they didn't know what gay was. They had never seen a gay man. There was never such a thing. They had never read it. They had not seen the example. There was no gay club. There was just nothing. They just felt different. And I have to share with you that the isolation in that mode, in that environment, is much deeper. You really do begin to believe that something is very wrong with you. So Elder Carlos, sitting in his nursing home, decides that his first letter that he was going to write anybody queer, young or old, is to tell them, you know what, you're cool just the way you are. I don't want you to feel badly. So here's what he writes. Dear young Carlos, it's okay to be different. It's okay not to be like everybody else. You come from a world nobody yet understands. It's painful to learn love won't come from those given to you, but from those you must find along the way. You will clash with the righteous, the bully, and the whisperer. Your mere presence shakes the foundation of the narrow sliver of happiness some have created, some have managed to carve out for themselves. Try not to take it personally. You are perfect just the way you are. Nothing others do or say is because of you, but a projection of their own reality. To be free, you will need to leave behind many things you now love. This will bring you great sadness. Stay strong. Trust your heart, because despite the odds, you win. Eventually, you will understand why you are who you had to be. Your life plants seeds for a better tomorrow for those who will come after you. You will never forget those who touched your heart, regardless if they healed or broke it, and you will forgive them all. Most of all, you will forgive yourself. Remember, I love you, and I will never abandon you. Your elder self. It is so transformative to write, my friends here with me today. I so encourage you to journal. To say it is cathartic is minimizing the effect of writing down your feelings, of writing down what you feel. And when I wrote this letter, the first letter to young Carlos, I cried my eyes out. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's still difficult for me to read that first letter. I'm not sure if there is some remnant of shame or guilt or hurt left inside me that it stirs up at every presentation. So I have to pace myself with the letter, and I hope you forgive me. The next letter that I felt was of key relevance to the LGBTQ community, and then we've concluded to everyone in the world, was the theme friendship. I mean, does anybody over 30 not have a first line of defense that are friends who know things about them their family will hopefully never find out? For me, my friends, I imagine myself on the Titanic and they being the lifeboat that took me out and that took me to shore, I should say. My friends are so important to me. And, you know, I tried to see them as just like a family, and it wasn't possible because the universe, God, a force, you, spirit, whatever you want to call it, has a way of providing for you just what you need. But it doesn't, I feel, there is no guarantee that that person will linger. They're almost like messengers that come to you at that time and say, here, this is what you need. Take my hand. I'm going to walk you, and then I'm going to release you, because all I'm here for is basically to save your ass. And I find that so moving. I find that so moving that in the preface of the book, I wrote the following. When I sat down to write this book, I remembered the corner bedroom of my home that had, it was on the corner, it had windows on each side of the corner, if I can explain myself. And there were lots of times when all we had was a fan. So the windows would be opened, and I know you Bisbee folk do that still today. And at that time, I saw the curtains. My mom had these, like, I don't know if they were linen or something, but they were white and they were sheer, and they would blow and move. And I would sit there and feel the breeze because it was cool. And when I started writing letters to young Carlos, that is specifically the first image that I saw. So I share with you. One cannot suppress past lives because they no longer fit in the present. Nothing can erase the memories of my days growing up on the border. Sheer white curtains billowing free from an open window, ushering the smell of first raindrops on parched soil. Then a local orchestra plays on a summer night as I dance around the kiosk at the Plaza Azueta. The hugs, tears, and at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve in the old casino. The tall pine tree, whose thick trunk I leaned against for my papa to measure my height, is no longer there. But I still see the tree with my mind's eye. I still feel my father's love reassuring me I am taller than I was 2 days ago. My mama lit the same tree with tiny blue lights in December to the beat of my anxious young heart. The echo of her sweet laughter will forever live in my memory. Still today, my spirits rise and lift, sensing a woman's joy. We love in order to relive the moment. Memories eternalize experiences and rejuvenate the spirit, if only momentarily, just like delicate morning dew refreshes tender green and vanishes with the light of day. Oh, and the eternal bond of friendship. How is it that the universe provides that special someone just when the world seems darkest? When I felt I shared everything and nothing with everyone, I learned to love the person, not because they were perfect, but by seeing their perfection in my life. Some hearts feel so familiar, as if they somehow knew each other before they actually met. I am a collection of these strangers' love. My heart is a rich repository of all the ways I've loved and been loved. A divergent heart subsisting on lukewarm understanding knows that stealth indifference, far more bewildering than outright rejection, is incompatible with belonging. I identified early on with silent voices at odds with imposed expectations, starting when society judged my existence as an aberration. Why me remains a mystery, but one where resiliency of the human spirit triumphs. As Elder Carlos says, it's painful to learn love doesn't come from those given to you, but from those you must find along the way. My life is blessed, but not remarkable enough to merit publication. Letters to Young Carlos is a fictional novella and not my story. I love young Carlos because he seeks to understand life's most challenging mystery, to love oneself and others, and be loved in return. So the mystery of friendship is well defined in the book. When Carlos meets a young boy who becomes his friend and who turns out to be gay also, it's quite unique. And this part of it actually happened. Elder Carlos writes this letter about friendship. Dear young Carlos, you found a real friend, one who hears the song in your heart and will sing it back to you if you forget. One with whom you can stand naked and bare your soul without shame. A real friend is a master teacher. Tulio, that's the name of the friend, will teach you that friendship is about defending your friend's happiness no matter what it is. Always know what a friend needs and be there for them. Many friends may say they feel your pain, but only the sincerest heart feels your joy. There's no friend ever like the one that knows you since you were a child. Love him like a brother. Miles may separate you, but everything will always remain the same. This is no ordinary friendship. I'd like to change gears a little bit and talk to you and speak with you about what I've learned from the book. You know, in my 40 years as an educator, I always remember, because it's so true, that the teacher is really the learner. We go into it with our lesson plans and our ideas, and it turns out that the student is a whole universe of understanding, and they lead us into remarkable ideas. I have one of the biggest surprises of Letters to Young Carlos. It's the number of non-queer people. That's probably how I'm going to put it. Some of you are on here now, thank you, who were impressed by the book, thank you. And I came up with this, after speaking with them, I came up with this term, which I call eavesdropping on life. Have you ever, you know, maybe you don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. We like to eavesdrop, we humans. We do. I mean, if somebody's on the phone over there, you're just shuffling, you're listening, at least indirectly. And it's a human nature. I actually spoke to a psychologist about it. I said, am I just kinky, or does everybody do it? And he said, oh no, this is remarkable. Because I remember, for example, I've lived in many apartments around the world, and some of them had very thin walls, and you could just hear the mumble of a conversation going on, and you don't necessarily stop what you're doing, but you kind of try to figure out, maybe it's a game. Well, what is it that they're saying? We eavesdrop. And I think when you read a book about a character or a hero or a situation that is very foreign to you, you are eavesdropping on life. That is why I feel people liked stories to young Carlos, because so many people wanted to be absolved from the guilt of not having been in agreement with a queer lifestyle. So now I have this book that says that this kid had never even seen a gay person, and he became gay. Whoa. So then it's not a choice. And one of the very first comments came from a woman, a very educated woman that I've known almost all my life, read the book. And when I saw her, she said, I loved the book. I cried through the whole book. And I said, I'm sorry, that also was a surprise and not my intention. But she said, you know, Carlos, I always wondered why a smart guy like you would choose to be gay. why would you choose to be to a life of discrimination and pain, especially in the 60s? Now, after reading the book, I realized that it was never a choice. And I admire you and the LGBT community more. So maybe the book made another friend for us. She eavesdropped on a gay life to be able to comprehend in some ways her judgment of someone else. And she maybe didn't even agree with the judgment. Maybe she wanted to say, oh, I'm so glad you're gay, Carlos. But she couldn't. Everybody told her that it was wrong. And religion told her. And at one point, the government told her. And the American Psychiatry Association said we were mental. So where was she going to come up with the goods to say, this is okay? And then she reads this story and she says, yeah. So I think one of the first lessons that I have is that when someone reads a book, and for those of you that are writers or that want to write, I think we are giving them a sneak peek. And the secret of the success is the sneak peek into a life unimaginable for them. Eavesdropping into a life is what I call it. The other thing that I was very moved by with the book is that when I did the Douglas reading, I again managed my expectations and I said, well, Douglas, a city of 16,000, I mean, I don't expect there to be a lot of people at my reading, even though, I am from there and some of my friends are going to come just because they're my friends. I wonder if they even read the book. Honestly, that's what I was thinking. So it was actually in August a year ago and it was very hot. And I went to Douglas and ever since I did presentations, I don't show up before. I show up 5 minutes before and I go to the stage or the microphone and I start. I don't hang out because it just is a different energy. So I showed up and at 5 minutes to 2 and it was a packed house. It was standing room only. And I was just floored. Again, my managing expectations thing worked. But when it was over, people bought all the books that we had, and then they were lining up for me to sign them. Two men came up, young men came up and said to me in Spanish, oh, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And oh, you're very welcome. Did you like it? Well, we don't speak English, they said, but we wanted to come. And I said, wait a minute. You sat through this for an hour in the heat, or maybe an hour and a half, and you didn't understand what I was saying? Well, then they got a little bit of pride going, well, we kind of got some of it, but we didn't. And I hugged them and I gave them a kiss. Honestly, I kissed them on the cheek. And that night I stayed in Douglas because I was exhausted. And I remember not being able to sleep because I couldn't get out of my mind the idea that how badly, how deep can the need be to be included, to be seen, to be loved, to be with people, as to come across the border and sit in a hot room trying to understand a man that's speaking in English. And that actually compelled me to translate the book and publish it in Spanish, which is called Cartas al Joven Carlos, which is also on Amazon. That was a very, very big moment for me. And before I retired, and I retired 3 years ago, 4 years ago. After being, after leading a gay life for 77 years or 70 maybe, I really had no comprehension of how fluid our gender was. I mean, I really knew it wasn't binary, you know, no men and women, no, not just that. We have men, women, gay, and that was it. And then maybe bi, and this book, because it was read by so many people that apparently aren't queer, began speaking to me. And if you wonder how it is that I speak with so many readers, I'm very active on social media, especially my Facebook page. And I have a website, which is carlosvalenzuela.com, where I get more messages than you can imagine, most of them private, and I keep them private. I began getting messages from men and women who were sexually or gender fluid. They didn't identify totally with a gender assigned. I honestly, my friends, did not know what to do about it, how to respond to it. I just, okay, and had to seek help, seriously, as to how to work with this. Many of them had experienced gender fluidity themselves since they were young, or here was the most classic case, a woman that would come up to me that would say, I dated a man, and we had a 2-year dating relationship, and there was sex and there was everything, and he left me because now he is a woman. I cannot believe that. And so a lot of this, which led me to understand a little bit better, and I'm no expert, on the topic of gender fluidity, which is the topic of my new book, Camaleón. Camaleón is the word for chameleon, of course, or the little lizard. And the reason it's appropriate is because it camouflages who it is all the time, to hide from predators, to hide from everyone. So that is where I'm going. And a lot of the people or some of the people that enjoyed young Carlos felt that there was a lot more to the story and they wanted to hear from it, more of it. So Camaleón is the continuation of letters to young Carlos from the time that he goes to high school, goes away, and starts looking for Jesse in Los Angeles. He goes to a boarding school and he finds Jesse, and he also finds an alcoholic mom, and it gets very, 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 very crazy. And then he goes to college and he goes through that whole thing also. And finally, he goes to work. He gets a job in San Francisco and goes to work in Brazil. And I won't tell you what happens. You're going to have to find out. I don't want to ruin it for you. But that is what it is. And the topic of the book, if I were to say, or of life, it just happens, my book happens to be one little tiny hair of it, is that you are either born and you fit in and you are able to show up as you are everywhere you go, or you are born to a world that you don't understand. You belong to a world that's foreign to you. And we know what the first person did. they enjoyed the benefits of acceptance, promotions, the spotlight, the stage. The other one, camouflaged like a chameleon, to be loved, to be seen, to be accepted. And the issue with that it's more than putting your best foot forward, because we all do. I mean, you know, I'm not going to show my dirty laundry everywhere, but this gender identity is a lot more than just more consequential than putting your best foot forward. It is presenting yourself as someone else where others befriend and, oh my God, fall in love with someone that you're not. And those relationships, those unsustainable situations and relationships, is the topic of Camaleon. And I'm looking at 6:20, Allison. I'm wondering if we want to do questions, or should I wrap up?
I would love to have a Q&A with you, and thank you for not just reading parts of this, but for, you know, including the deeper conversation of, you know, what is truly a story of love,
Mhm.
but of so
Uh,
many aspects, a mosaic of love, really.
It is, Allison, and one of my readers said to me, well, young Carlos had two loves, because he does fall in love with a boy, Jesse. But young Carlos had two loves, didn't he? And I said, no, in the book, he really only had Jesse. And he said, no, no, no. He had Jesse and he had his best friend, Tulio, which I said, I stand corrected. You are correct. Yeah.
Well, and there is the third relationship, which is truly the relationship with the self and
Yes.
learning how to love yourself
Mhm.
and accept yourself. And I feel it's so great to hear you talk about, you know, these deeper aspects of being human and of not being human alone. No man is an island, or woman either, but about how our love is an interrelational um, aspect of how we live in a community and make community. It's so I will stop, but I will have questions. But first, I'd like to open it up to everybody. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question or type it in the chat box, I can read it to Carlos, or any thoughts as well, comments.
Well,
Well, hello.
yes.
Okay. I'm not Peter Levine. I'm Joan Reichel, and that's my husband. But I want to thank you for your writing and your presentation, and I'm glad you were able to do it. I was shocked when the last time the electricity was not available. So you were one powerful man to make that happen, and now you're here to share with us your story, which is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. You're a poet, and it's beautiful to hear. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for your comment. You know, I I feel that I write for those who are not seen. If you are not seen, if you mark the box of other occasionally and you never have the spotlight, I write my books for you, because I see you, I hear you, I love you, and I am you. That's the reason why I write.
Lovely. Thank you. Would anybody else like to ask a question or make a comment?
Hi, Carlos. This is Richard again. I had a question for you. You're following up a really popular book, one that reached so many people, and I'm curious about the process, the emotions of diving into the sequel and after the success of the first one. How did you feel? How did the process go for you?
It's very scary, Richard, initially, because it was so scary that I kept it to myself for a long time as I began writing, because as people compliment the book, you almost want to say, oh, don't say anymore, because it's then you just keep moving the goalposts, and will I ever be able to write anything that you like again? Because you seem to like this so much. And the jury is out, Richard. I mean, we'll find out after Labor Day. I certainly tried, but like we said, I'm managing my expectations. I decided to not include many of the old characters. The only ones that repeat are Carlos, Tulio. Tulio has a fan club, for your information. Tulio could be a book all by himself. It's just they'd love Tulio. And it's curious because in the story, Carlos is kind of restrained because of his homophobic father, but Tulio is out there. He is gayer than anything, and he is probably the favorite character. And so only Tulio and Carlos and Jesse moved to the new book, and everybody else is new. And in order to put Carlos through the ringer, in a way, he will meet genders from across the spectrum as he goes through high school, college, and work all the way to the end. And they have one message for him. They say to him, don't ever assume who we are until you give us a chance to tell you who we are. Because the only definition about gender is that there is no definition. So, but it was very scary, and I started very slowly. I started, I'm going to say 10 times, and tore everything up and started again. Yeah.
Carlos, what is the pub date for the new book?
What is the what? Excuse me?
The publication date, the release
The
date?
publication date is going to be Labor Day. It'll be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and I don't know where the publisher is putting it, but apparently 100 other bookstores. It will only be available in paperback. My publisher has a very unique approach to this. He will only introduce the ebook maybe in January or later. So unfortunately, well, but you can go to the library and check it out.
And also Bisbee Books and Music
Bisbee
is
Music, yes.
actually has joined us on this program, but they carry letters to young Carlos, and it looks like we'll be carrying the new book. And then you can actually order from Bisbee Books and Music as well.
Yes, I had the pleasure of visiting your store also in last year for a book reading at Bisbee Books and Music. It was great fun. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad. We'd love to have you come back.
Of course.
Yeah, we'd love to have.
Who doesn't want to go to Bisbee? I mean, come on, raise your hand if you don't want to go to Bisbee. Nobody.
And so it's a very interesting conversation, as we are in the 21st century, but the the nuances of gender and sexuality, which are two different things. And I think that I happen to be the mother of a Gen Z teen, and there's a whole new language, new words, new definitions, and also in that generation, regardless of what sexual orientation or gender they have that language and they are happy to help explain something so simple as gender identity and sexual orientation are two different things.
Mhm.
And Kit Kat, I see, whoop whoop, non-binary person here watching. I am friends with a lot of teens, and we did an informal survey where I think out of 18, I think we were at something like 4, cisgender and heterosexual. It was a very small number in 18 teenagers from the age of 15 to 17, say, at the time.
Well, it's something like 5% of young people today identified as. It's very interesting, the survey that I read, and I don't have that in front of me, but I will be happy to share it later if somebody wants it. You can reach me on Facebook or through the library. They did a survey, and of course, everything when you do a survey depends on how you write the questions. But in this case, they wrote, do you identify primarily as a man, mostly a man, a woman, mostly a woman? That's the way the questions went. And 5% of all young people identified as mostly man or mostly woman, which means that they're not necessarily trans, but they're very fluid. It's just, to me, the best explanation of why we have a rainbow flag. It's just forever.
And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about and Kit Kat also, if you wanted to maybe answer this. For allies, for people unfamiliar with what that means to somebody, about how we can, what is the best way? I'm asked this question all the time. Do I just ask people to explain it to me? Are they going to be offended if I ask them why they prefer they, them? What is the best way to find out what that means to them? And I wondered if you could speak a little to, for people curious or wanting more understanding how to approach.
Do you mean when you see someone, you want to make sure that you identify them properly? Is that it?
That too, but also I talked to some people who they hear, especially a young person, say, "Oh, I prefer to be referred to as they, them." But these people, older people maybe, don't know how to ask them, "What does that mean to you? Why? What is they, them? What is non-binary? What is gender fluid?" They're
Right.
afraid to ask. They don't, so they will ask me, how do I ask,
I think the onus is on our community to explain that, Allison. I mean, personally, anybody who does not identify as how they look, I mean, if you look like a guy or you look like a gal, and you identify as something else, I think they understand. They might not like it, but they understand how someone unfamiliar with what might be going on could miscalculate who they are. And I think very politely we need to say, I prefer to be referred to as so and so, and my pronouns are, and it's a very, but you know what, Allison, I've heard your question answered in many ways. I've heard people say, go right up to that person and ask them, how do you want to be seen? But the problem is, not everybody is easily identifiable as non-cis.
Right.
I mean, so I think we need to live in a world sort of like the topic of chameleon. We need to travel in a world where we wait for the person to tell us who they are. That's where we are now. Maybe in as we evolve, it will be different, but I would never assume anyone's gender or any gender identity or their sexuality. I would personally probably just pass on it until I'm corrected. And if I am, I would be very gracious and say, thank you very much for explaining that to me.
Thank you. That's a really wonderful answer. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or thoughts? You can just unmute yourself.
This is Natasha. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank you so much, Carlos, for your book, for your upcoming book, and for this talk tonight. You have touched so many lives, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone you have touched, and you know that the book touched me very, very deeply. So yeah, just a thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. And I mean, that is from such an educator and such a light. You are a sunrise to so many people, and I take that as the most remarkable compliment. I will sleep with it tonight, and it will be wonderful. And before I leave, and before we leave, I do want to say something. I want to leave you with something which encapsulates for me the reason why we were together this afternoon, besides the ability to form community, to contribute to that tapestry that we all are. You know, we all are a different color and are in the tapestry that we form, which is so beautiful. And there's our job is to be that color, and to be that color really well. I mean, if you're a pink, I think I'm a pink. I'd like to be a pink. If you're a pink, be a real good pink. Don't spend any time wanting to be a blue. Let the blue do the blue. You do pink as well as you can. And I think that's why things like this with the Copper Queen Library build the community that we want to live in. I mean, imagine how libraries have moved and changed from when I was a kid. And a library now is a nucleus of the community, and I'm so pleased. So I prepared something for you, which was like a farewell, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. May you cherish your soul's uniqueness and allow it to guide you to your special destiny here. May you come to realize that behind the facade and all the games we play, something beautiful is always happening. And I believe that with all my heart. No matter how dark your day looks, it will pass, and tomorrow will be a beautiful day. And I leave you with my best wishes of a bright tomorrow, and with a thought, or perhaps a challenge. When are you going to finally believe that what's coming and what's ahead is far better than the past? Embrace that, believe that, because it's true. The future is much brighter than anything that you've seen in the past. Believe it. And thank you for being with me. Thank you for reading my book, and may you forever shine. Thank you.
Oh, Carlos, thank you so much. Thank you for your voice, for your powerful voice and your powerful heart. And part of that life as an empath, which can be difficult at times because you do feel so much of everybody around you, but the empathy that you bring to all of us, and of course, thank you for your storytelling. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it's either the first or the second Tuesday in October. We will have Carlos back with us at the Copper Queen Library for his new book, Chameleon. And thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This was just a very special program. I really appreciate it.
It was wonderful. Thank you all for coming. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Well, read a book.
Read a book.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Allison.
Oh, and thank you, Benita, for introducing us, for introducing Carlos and myself.
Bye, Bonita.
Bye.
Adios. Love you.